The greatest mystery in our skies has just gotten a little bit stranger. Harvard's top scientists say that it could be a nuclear-powered alien craft of all things.
There are things in space that are not meant for us to understand. We just learned that the hard way. Comet 3I Atlas, a traveler from a distant star, was supposed to be a scientific wonder, but as it got closer, it revealed its true nature. 4 of our most advanced space telescopes watched in unison as the object shifted to a hostile blood-red hue, a color that defies astrophysics. This wasn't a discovery. It was an activation. And now the U.S. Space Force is preparing for a scenario that until last week was pure science fiction. Red alert in the void. In the cold, silent theater of space, we're used to a certain set of rules. Comets glow a ghostly green or blue. Asteroids are a dull gray. And stars shine with a predictable fire. But not all things are what they seem. On a day that will likely be remembered in classified circles for decades, those rules were broken. The story starts with 3I Atlas, discovered just last year. It was officially designated the third interstellar object ever detected, a visitor from another solar system passing through our celestial backyard. For months, it behaved exactly as expected. It was a faint, fuzzy blob traveling at an incredible $100,000 MEPRE, getting brighter as it neared the sun. Astronomers all over the world were crazy about it. A rare chance to study a piece of another star's family. Then came the change. It happened without warning. The first sign came from the Spitzer Space Telescope, an observatory that sees the universe in infrared. It detected a sudden massive spike in heat from the comet's core or nucleus. This was unusual but not unheard of. Comets can fracture and release trapped gases. But what came next was the real shocker. The James Webb Space Telescope, the most powerful observatory ever built, was also watching. Its data came in minutes later, and the scientists couldn't believe their eyes. The coma, the fuzzy atmosphere around the comet, was changing color. The typical cyan and green glow caused by the sun-exciting diatomic carbon gas was vanishing. It was being replaced by a deep pulsating crimson red. You see, a color like that is a huge red flag. In astronomy, red can mean a lot of things. The presence of complex organic molecules called tholins or light, being stretched out from a fast-moving object. But this wasn't that. The shade was too pure, too uniform. It was less like a natural phenomenon and more like a light switch had been flipped. To be sure it wasn't a sensor error, observatories were scrambled. The legendary Hubble Space Telescope was redirected, its sharp vision confirming Webb's data. Then even the retired Kepler telescope in its extended mission was used to measure the light curve. The result was the same across 4 of our best instruments. 3I Atlas was now a hostile blood-red object, and it was shining with its own light, not just reflecting the sun's. The thing nobody tells you is that the light wasn't steady. It was pulsing with a complex repeating rhythm, almost like a heartbeat that beat once every 84.6 seconds. It was a signal. The scientific community was officially in a state of controlled panic. This was no longer a comet. A comet is a dirty snowball. This was something else entirely, masquerading as a comet. It had used the sun's energy to power up, to shed its disguise, and to start broadcasting something. The data was immediately flagged and sent up a chain of command that goes far beyond NASA. It landed on the desks of a very specific group of people at Vandenberg Space Force Base, because when an object from another star system suddenly turns on a giant red pulsating light, it stops being a scientific curiosity. It becomes a matter of national security, not a comet Icarus protocol. Once the data was confirmed, the game changed completely. This was no longer a job for astronomers with tweed jackets. This was a job for military analysts and codebreakers. The United States Space Force, the newest branch of the armed forces, was created for exactly this kind of scenario, a potential threat from beyond Earth. Within hours, a classified task force was formed, codenamed Project Icarus. Their one and only job was to figure out what 3I Atlas was, what it wanted, and if it was a threat. The first order of business was to analyze the pulse. That rhythmic 84.6 second beat was too perfect to be natural. Natural objects in space tumble and spin, but this was as regular as a clock. Analysts at the National Security Agency, the NSA, were brought in. They are the best codebreakers on the planet, but they usually work with emails and phone calls. Now they were trying to find a pattern in the light from a transfigured comet hundreds of millions of miles away. They quickly discovered that the pulse was not just a simple on-off beat. Within each pulse of red light were trillions of smaller, faster fluctuations, a complex stream of information buried inside the main signal. It was like finding a whole library hidden inside a single word. The problem was they had no way to translate it. It was a language written in a form of physics they were only beginning to understand. While the codebreakers were at work, the Space Force was busy pointing every sensor they had at the object. This included the Space Surveillance Network, a global system of telescopes and radars designed to track satellites and space debris. They were trying to get a better look at 3I Atlas. They wanted to know its exact size, shape, and composition. The initial readings were just as baffling as the color. The object was about 2 miles long and shaped like a long, thin shard of glass, but the radar returns made no sense. At times, the object seemed to be completely radar-absorbent like a stealth bomber. At other times, it would reflect radar signals with an impossible intensity. The thing nobody tells you is what the heat signature showed. While the outer shell was glowing red, the core of the object remained at a temperature just 3 degrees above absolute zero. That's 454 degrees F. This is a scientific impossibility. You can't have something generating that much light and energy on its surface while its core is near the coldest temperature possible in the universe. It defies the laws of thermodynamics. It was like finding a bonfire that was frozen solid in the middle. This single piece of data was the most terrifying of all. It meant the object was using a form of technology that was completely unknown to us. It wasn't just a more advanced version of our own tech. It was something else entirely built on a different understanding of physics. This is why the alert level was raised. This wasn't just an object sending a signal. This was an object that could manipulate energy and matter in ways we couldn't comprehend. The question was no longer just what is it saying? It was now what can it do? The Pentagon's longest gaze. With the world's intelligence agencies completely stumped by the signal, Project Icarus shifted its focus from decoding to defense. The mission was no longer about understanding the message. It was about preparing for the messenger. The first and most critical question was its trajectory. Where was 3I Atlas going? Original projections showed it would swing around the sun and then be flung back out into interstellar space, never to return. But this was no longer a predictable chunk of rock and ice. This was an object under intelligent control. And what many people don't realize is that even a small change in its path could have huge consequences. Using the combined power of the world's largest radio telescopes, the Space Force began a constant 24/7 monitoring campaign. They were looking for any sign of a course correction, any tiny puff from a thruster that would indicate the object was steering itself. For weeks, there was nothing. It stayed on its original comet-like path. Some in the Pentagon started to relax. Maybe this was all just a strange natural phenomenon after all. Maybe it was just a light show. But the veterans in the USSF knew better. In warfare, you don't show your hand until you have to. And if this object was a probe or something more, it wouldn't make a move until it was ready. Then it happened. It was a change so small it was almost missed. The object passed through the orbit of Mars, and as it did, it failed to slow down as much as it should have. The gravity of Mars should have pulled on it, tugging on its trajectory by a tiny but measurable amount. It didn't. It was as if the gravity of an entire planet meant nothing to it. For an object 2 miles long, this was a jaw-dropping revelation. It meant 3I Atlas had some kind of internal drive, a way of counteracting gravity itself. It was actively resisting the pull of the planets. This was the final proof they needed. This was an artificial object, a ship, a probe, something with a purpose. The mood inside Project Icarus turned from one of tense observation to grave concern. They were now dealing with a technology that could negate gravity. Our most advanced rockets are still just controlled explosions. We are cavemen throwing spears while this thing was a ghost that could walk through walls. The alert was quietly elevated. Special satellite teams were activated, tasked with developing defensive strategies. How do you stop something that gravity can't touch? How do you defend against a technology that you can't even begin to understand? The thing nobody tells you is that at this point, the mission expanded. The USSF started looking not just at 3I Atlas but also at what was happening here on Earth. Were there any other strange signals? Any unusual UAP sightings? They were operating under a terrifying new assumption. 3I Atlas might not be alone. It might just be the scout facing the unknown. For anyone trying to wrap their head around this, it can feel like a story straight out of Hollywood. A mysterious object from another star, a strange signal, a secret military task force. It's easy to dismiss it, but the thing is, this isn't about belief. It's about data. It's about 4 of our most reliable scientific instruments all telling us the same impossible story. It's about radar and thermal readings that break the known laws of physics. We're in a new world now, whether we're ready for it or not. The trajectory of 3I Atlas is still taking it towards its closest approach with the sun. After that, it will head back out into the void. But no one in Project Icarus believes it will just leave quietly. Are we missing a key detail that would explain all of this in a simple, natural way? Maybe. Scientists are desperately looking for one. But with every passing hour, that possibility seems less and less likely. We are faced with a conclusion that is as humbling as it is terrifying. Someone or something sent a probe into our solar system, a probe that is far beyond our technology. It traveled for what could be thousands or even millions of years. And now that it is here, it has turned on a light. It has announced its presence. This forces us to ask the big question, why? Why now? If a civilization has the technology to build a gravity-defying, self-illuminating probe, they surely had the technology to keep it hidden. They could have slipped through our system completely undetected, but they chose not to. They changed the object to a hostile, impossible color. They started broadcasting a complex pulsing signal. This was not an accident. This was a deliberate act. Inside Project Icarus, the debate is no longer about what it is, but why it's here. And some truly wild theories are now being treated with deadly seriousness. One school of thought, the lighthouse theory, suggests the message isn't even for us. In this scenario, 3I Atlas is an ancient warning beacon, and our solar system is about to drift into a dangerous region of the galaxy, or perhaps a different unseen threat is approaching. The red light isn't hostile to us. It's a galactic danger sign, a cosmic road closed signal that has just been activated. We're just the bystanders who happen to live by the lighthouse. An even darker theory, one that's gaining traction, is the Harbinger theory. This suggests the object is a sophisticated terraforming machine or a seed ship. The sudden energy spike and color change could be the start of its primary function, releasing clouds of microscopic self-replicating machines designed to alter our atmosphere, our oceans, or our biology to pave the way for a future colonization. The hostile red glow in this case would be the color of our world beginning to change. Then there's the most unsettling theory of all, the litmus test. Proponents of this idea believe the object's creators are watching us right now. The entire event, the disguise as a comet, the dramatic color change, the indecipherable signal is a carefully crafted psychological test. They want to see how we react to something completely outside our comprehension. Do we respond with fear and aggression? Is this a first contact scenario or the prelude to something we aren't prepared for? Tell us what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates on this developing story.